And really, we don't do anything important without struggling. So we have to have students feel comfortable with that. We find that when we share with them, we want you to struggle, they're more willing to be persistent and to keep going.
Hi, and welcome to the Kindled podcast. I'm Katie, your host for today, and in this episode, we're talking to Dr. Jo Boaler. We talk about math anxiety, neuroplasticity, and what we as parents and educators can do to help kids develop a growth mindset around math. But before we get to our conversation, I'll tell you a little bit more about Dr. Boaler. She's a Stanford professor. Formerly, she was the Marie Curie Professor of Mathematics Education in England and a mathematics teacher in London Comprehensive Schools. She's the author of 19 books, numerous articles, and a White House presenter on women and girls. In her latest book, Math-ish, Finding Creativity, Diversity, and Meaning in Mathematics, talks about lots of the things that we talk about on this episode, and I can't wait to get that book. She co-founded ucubed.org and strugly.com, and she was on the writing team for the 2023 California Mathematics Framework and was named as one of the 8 educators changing the face of education by the BBC. Let's get to our conversation with Dr. Boaler. Dr. Boaler, welcome to the Kindle podcast. We're super excited to have you on today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's go back in time a little bit. Take me to the beginning of your work. Where did you start? How did you get to be doing what you're doing? And kind of tell me what your big why is, or like the change you're seeking to make in the world.
Okay, well, I started my career in London schools as a maths teacher, and I taught at Haverstock School where there were over 40 different languages spoken. It's a very diverse school with students, as you might imagine, in central London, lots of students who'd only recently come to the country. And what I found there was students with a lot of gaps in their knowledge. And with many of them, I worked one-to-one to catch them up. And that was when I learned that really anybody can catch up and students can learn anything. And that's really been my North Star through my career, that we know that every student can learn maths, and it's really just about the opportunities we give them. So I went from teaching in London to doing a master's degree at King's College, London University, and then a doctorate, and then was presenting some of the results one day in a conference in Athens when people at Stanford were in the audience, and they said, come to Stanford, come and be a professor at Stanford. And at first I said no. They started sending me picture books of California, and they said, just come for a visit. So we thought, well, I guess we could just go for a visit. And then I ended up taking the job at Stanford. And after some years there, I met Carol Dweck, who is the creative mindset. And we together agreed that we really needed to get the ideas out to teachers and parents. And since then, we started a website called ucubed that gets the ideas of mindset out and also how to teach with a growth mindset. Lots of free resources, lessons, and videos for students and many other things.
Yeah,
So,
we actually used uCube at Prenda. We love it.
Nice. Yeah. That's some of my story.
That's great. Okay, so tell me about your own relationship with math. Like, why math for you? Why personally do you choose to focus on that?
Well, I guess my first interest in maths really started, or my first interest in learning math started when I was in school. I was pretty good at maths, but I didn't enjoy it that much. It was just answer all these short questions, go as fast as you can. But I did notice that a lot of my friends really struggled with it, and I would help them. So I think that was my first awakening of thinking about learning and why people find maths difficult. And then in England, we choose 3 subjects when you're 17 and 18 called A-levels. I chose maths. And that was when I had my first amazing teacher of maths who just changed everything for me. She had us work in groups, discussing ideas. It was sort of calculus mainly. Then everything changed. I hadn't been planning to really stay in maths. I wanted to be a scientist, but she changed the way I thought about maths, changed the way I thought about myself. And I ended up becoming a maths teacher in London, and from there, where I am now.
I love it. What about math and math education feels broken to you?
Ooh, so much, unfortunately. There's a lot of things we need to change in maths education. So one of them is I work with neuroscientists at Stanford, and they have now got this really important data on the way our brains process maths. And one of the things that they know is we have 5 different pathways that we can use when we're thinking about maths. 2 of them are visual pathways, so at the back of the brain, really important to activate these different pathways. So a big message that we always share is maths should be taught in a multi-dimensional way where students get to see things visually. They get to build things with their hands. They get to speak and talk about maths. It's not just answering questions with numbers. Then, of course, a big thing that needs to change is this myth that's out there in the system that only some people can do well at maths. The terrible idea of the maths person laid into that are all sorts of stereotypes about who it is can do well in maths. So if we could change those ideas people have about maths and also make it this broad subject that's taught honoring all the different ways we think and learn, I think we would have a wholly different nation of maths loving people.
Yeah, tell me more. Some of your research goes into kind of like the link between beliefs and cognition, and I
Huh?
think this is aligned with Dweck's work, right?
Right.
To help us realize that what you believe about yourself as a learner actually influences your ability to
Yeah.
learn, right? Go into
Little
that. It's so
changes,
interesting.
yeah. And in my latest book, which is called Mathish, I share this research in the first chapter, actually new research from somebody called Lang Chen, who has shown that not only does what you believe about maths correlate with your maths achievement, but what you believe about maths, they see in the hippocampus as the brain is working on maths. It literally shapes your ability to learn. And a lot of times people have thought, you have beliefs over here and you have knowledge over here, and they're kind of separate. But now we know they're not separate and they're very intertwined. So we should be spending a lot more time with learners on helping them feel good about maths. It's really neglected in the school system, and we just focus on knowledge and getting kids through tests. And that's such an important missing piece.
Yeah, when I think about math and my own experience with math, I definitely have a fixed mindset around math. I wear the hat of not a math person loudly sometimes. And it has closed. I remember being maybe a freshman in high school and wanting to take this physics class that involved some math. And it was for freshmen. It wasn't a complicated class, but I think my dad said something to me like, that class is for smart people. And he wouldn't sign my card to get
Oh,
into it. And I
gosh.
was like,
Yeah.
what are you? I
Yes.
mean, he did not
Yeah.
know any better. He was doing the best he could. But yeah, just like the how we teach kids, the language we use with kids, maybe we could talk about that. Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing as adults to kind of shape the beliefs? How do we influence that?
Parents, unfortunately, in some cases, can be very influential in kids' ideas about maths, and mostly parents don't know what maths can be and should be or how important these ideas are. The whole idea of being smart is a very damaging fixed idea. Students think of that in a very fixed way, and what we know is that everybody's brains are changing, growing, adapting. So, yeah, we know that children's mindsets are formed by the time they're 3 years of age. And of course, they can change at any time. And that comes from the praise we give students, and that parents who are praising their children in fixed ways, that does lead to the development of a fixed mindset. Some people are smart, some people are not, some people are gifted, some people are not. These are all very fixed, damaging ideas. And we try and help people learn to give sort of growth praise. So instead of saying to your children, that's great, you're so smart that you could do that, saying, love the way you approach that problem, or that's a really creative way of thinking about that. Anything that values what they're doing rather than this fixed notion is very helpful.
Yeah. So why can you go into a little bit more like what is it about that belief that limits your ability to learn? Like you mentioned the hippocampus a little bit. Like, can you dig into that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the damages of those fixed ideas, what we know is when you praise students for being smart, for example, um, they feel good at first. They're like, oh, great, I'm smart. But then later on, when they mess up on something, which they will, they start to think, oh, I'm not so smart.
Mhm.
And we know about a lot of people. I teach an undergraduate class at Stanford. I have a whole host of these young people who've been praised for being gifted and smart, and they have very fixed mindsets. And what happens when they come to Stanford and they take a class that's difficult and maybe they get a B or a C is they fall apart and they think it's a major crisis and they drop out. So these ideas are important for all students. People think, oh, they're for low achieving students. It's not the case. And in fact, the biggest group of fixed mindset students in the school system is high achieving girls.
Really? That's fascinating. You presented at the White House on this, right? Like about girls in education.
Yes.
Tell me about that work.
Yeah, that was an interesting event at the White House when it was a group that had been put together to look at girls in STEM, and all the other groups that were there were groups like the Girl Scouts and different groups were there, but they all were delivering like an outside intervention to help girls feel good about STEM. So I was there and I was really championing the importance of teaching all the time. Like we shouldn't be just thinking, well, we can fix girls, let's damage girls and then go off and fix them in an after school program. We need to do better inside teaching because we know that those regular teaching interactions are really important.
And the people that, I mean, from the like attachment theory kind of body of literature, like the people that are closest to the child typically have the greatest impact on that child's beliefs. So that's the parent. And if you're attending traditional school, like you spend all day long with your early elementary teachers, right? So
Right.
you're
Yeah.
playing a very heavy role in that belief development. I'm curious around like, okay, we talked about the belief, and then let's shift over to talking about knowledge and actual like math acquisition. Because I feel like sometimes when we talk about get like you said, like trying to get kids to feel better about themselves and about math, that feels a little like fluffy to people, where
Mhm.
it's like, no, like math has a right answer. This isn't like a Socratic discussion. Like there's a right answer. We are like speed does, in people's perceptions around like speed kind of matters. Like the faster you go, the smarter you are. The fewer
Mhm.
mistakes you make, the smarter you are, right? Like these are the kind of our stereotypes, our beliefs. What's wrong with those beliefs? Like, why is this not a fluffy uh, kind of
Yeah. I mean,
response to
what
math?
we're trying to do it through YouCubed and the books I've written is show how you can teach maths in a way that students love the subject. And it's really hardcore maths. It's not that we're saying, oh, let's go off and play and that will make you feel better about maths. But you can teach algebra visually by having kids look at patterns and be wowed by the beauty of the mathematics, and they're learning algebra at the same time. So this is not a sacrifice we have to make. We're going to stop doing proper math so we can help students feel good about it. We can teach in ways that students learn to love and see the beauty in maths. And what's so great about that is when teachers start doing that, they start to love maths more and
Yeah.
love teaching more because they get such a positive response from students. We have a summer camp model, and you can see it on YouCubed, where we develop this summer camp for students. It's typically about 4 weeks long, and we share this beautiful maths with them and lots of mindset messages. And what we find is a really short time in that maths environment, and student scores and state tests really massively go up. So we know that this creative, more joyful maths increases students' mathematical cognition. We don't need to make maths dry and be encouraging speed. The same with that speed message. I mean, we might agree that thinking quickly is helpful in some situations, so not really many, but you don't get kids being faster by encouraging speed. In fact, often that makes them slower because it's what brings anxiety to students. Actually, the way to be faster with maths is to be really comfortable with numbers and concepts and then release your mind from these negative anxiety producing ideas. It's a bit like that old expression that, we don't make kids taller by measuring them.
I love that
completely
saying.
over and over again, and the same with
Yes.
math. But we don't make them faster by giving them speed tests.
That's so true. There's like biology behind this, right? Like when you put a child in a stress inducing situation, they're feeling a lot of anxiety, like that activates the sympathetic nervous system, the prefrontal cortex comes offline. Like that is the part of the brain they need to stay engaged in that problems, to stay focused, to
Mhm.
figure that out, to reason. So you're disconnecting them from that part of the brain by
Exactly.
introducing this
One of the
fear or anxiety.
neuroscientists I work with, Vinod Menon, has shown that when people who are anxious about math see numbers, a fear center lights up in the brain. It's the same fear center that lights up when we see snakes and spiders. So, and exactly as that fear center lights up, the problem solving centers shut down.
I had no idea that it's like literally the fear center of the brain with numbers. That's shocking. But I can like relate to that. Like when I think about math, especially if someone's going to watch me do math, even now, like,
Mhm.
we're like building Prendo, we're leading this company, like if I'm sharing my screen or something and I have to do math, I'm like very uncomfortable and like immediately, like you feel all of the same feelings, like as if like a loud dog was barking at you or something. You almost get hit by a car. You feel this like panic in you, and then your mind goes
Oh,
blank and
so
you
do
can't do the
you.
math.
It's true of so many people, even people who are really comfortable with maths. So many maths teachers, when they go out for meals, their friends are like, "Oh, you're the maths teacher. You work out the tip," and they're all staring at you. Literally, people's brains shut down. They're like, they
Hmm.
suddenly can't do this calculation. That
Hmm.
is the impact of that fear hitting the important part of the brain. So
Yeah.
totally true
Some,
of everybody, I think. Everybody fears being watched doing maths,
yeah.
and that's yeah.
Something that we get, so Prenda takes a very similar approach. Like we really want to create an environment that is where kids feel a lot of internal safety. So we have access to the prefrontal cortex, right? So we do a lot of the same mindset work you're talking about. And when we tell people about this, they say like, "Oh, it sounds too easy." Learning has to be somehow inherently painful for it to be effective. And even when you talk to kids about their pre and post, like they went to traditional school and then they came to Prenda, or maybe they had a certain teacher that was able to create that environment and then a certain teacher that wasn't able to. We asked them, how hard are you working? They will actually say that they are working less hard in this environment that's more conducive to internal safety, but they're growing at like 1.5 grade levels per year or something like that. They're growing way more, but their perception is, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
it's like,
also
yeah, they're believing that like they've
because
internalized
they
this
lost
idea that learning has to be painful.
yeah. If you set up that safe environment and you allow students to be successful, they will say, "This is easier in this environment," even though it isn't easier.
Hmm.
It's
The
just that
math isn't easier. Yeah.
you've allowed them to be successful. Well, one of our key messages, talking of this sort of pain, is that struggle is really good for the brain. You want
Yeah.
to be struggling. You don't want to find work easy because that's not good for your brain. And when your brain is struggling, that's when it's really making those important connections and growth. And so we do a lot of work to help kids feel good about struggle. When I teach students, whether they're young students or Stanford students, I will say to them, I want you to struggle. I'm going to give you work that will cause you to struggle because that's really good for you. That's really good for your brain. And we use James Nottingham's metaphor of the pit of struggle, the learning pit. You
Tell
want
me
to
about
get
that. I haven't
down
heard
into
about
the
that.
pit.
Yeah, teach me
It's a
that.
really good one, and lots of teachers find it really helpful. And there's some teachers, and I have visuals, so these are my books. They get kids to draw their own pit. So you want to go down into the pit of struggle. And in these drawings, you see kids on the way down going, "Oh, I'm not good at maths. I'm terrible." But then as they're coming out, they're saying, "I can just use these tools. I can keep going." And the teachers I work with say to students, I could take your hand and we could jump over the pit together. But that's not what we want. You need to be in the pit. It's like, and when we run workshops with teachers, we hear them going, "Oh, I'm really in the pit," when we give them these hard concepts, hard
Yeah.
tasks. So just celebrating those times of struggle, I find that to be extremely liberating message for students.
I was just thinking like we have so much fear, right? And where's this fear come from? It's like, oh, I'm less valuable if I'm not good at math. I'm less smart. My parents would
Right.
be disappointed. Like all of these very emotionally driven beliefs are in there. And when you when you normalize that and then you celebrate it, it's like, you got a D on your math test. This is going on the refrigerator. This is excellent. Because
Right.
what do we struggle? Like in our family or in our class, like we celebrate how long
Mm,
you stayed with this problem, or like how
right.
diligent
Hmm.
you were in
Yeah, that's
persisting,
really
right?
great.
And then next time they're like, oh, my mom feels proud of me when I work my butt off, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like, okay, then that's my behavior. And that's actually going to engender much more long-term success in that child's life than I usually get lucky. I'm feeling this lucky smart feeling, and I don't actually have any of those. All of the pits in my path so far have been easy for me to skip over. And I haven't spent a lot of time developing, like, if you think about just the muscles and ingenuity and all of the skills you would develop if you actually were in a pit and you had to get yourself out, right? Like, that's a much stronger brain on the other side of that pit.
Exactly. And really, we don't do anything important without struggling. So you're not going to get to that really good knowledge and creativity and everything that we know to be important. So we have to have students feel comfortable with that. We find that when we share with them, we want you to struggle, they're more willing to be persistent and to keep going. And although this is a message we share in all of our work, I don't hear teachers doing it very often. I think it's a hard one for teachers because, our education system has for so long just been all about correctness. So it's a harder one for teachers, I think, to take on. But when they do
Yeah.
take it on, it's really transformative.
What are some of the other blockers to like really changing this in society? What's getting in the way?
Yeah, well, um, first of all, there's resistance to these ideas, and I've
Yeah.
faced a lot of it in my career. There are some people who don't want to believe that they're not especially gifted or, that they've really absorbed these fixed ideas and they want to keep them. That can be hard for some people to take on that idea that everybody can learn and grow.
Okay, I'm
And then,
having like, sorry, like a major epiphany here because I've never applied fixed mindset to like say an administrator or someone who's like making decisions. It's like, oh, I was special, I was gifted, and if I allow everyone to, if we let go of these
Mhm.
labels, then I am now less valuable, and I as an adult am still feeling like I'm fighting for my value and using these things and my credentials and things like that to substantiate myself. Wow, never
A
realized that
lot
before.
of high school maths teachers in particular have built their whole identity around this idea that they were the special one who could learn maths. And so they, as a group, tend to be more resistant to the idea that we can all learn. And then other factors that work against change, I think there's too much in the standards that are given to teachers every year, just way too much in there. So when we say to them, let students work in depth and think deeply about things and make connections, that they think, I don't have time. I've got to get through all of this in the book, these massive maths books that are in the US that kids can hardly carry. So we have one of the things we did in California, working out the new California framework, is rearrange standards into bigger ideas. So teachers don't have so many to get through and they can think, well, this is a big idea. There's like 8 in each grade level. I'm really going to go into depth on that big idea. I'm really going to give kids rich experiences. And so, yeah, teachers, everything feels too rushed in the school system and they feel that they have to get
Well,
through so much.
right. And that, I mean, they are under a lot of professional pressure to perform, right? Those state tests, like their schools are judged on that, they're judged on that. And a lot of it's out of their hands, kind of like it's the district saying, like, this is the curriculum schedule for all of the kids that are 9 in your care, like you have to expose them to fill in the blank, and it's 1,000 things long. So it's like there's this immense amount of pressure. And so it's like you really need like a system-wide change to really, it's not just like, oh, teachers do a better job, be more creative. It's like, well,
You do.
the teacher's acting a certain way because of like, I don't want to kick the can up the road, but it really is like a very high level problem that's trickling down and damaging the student's education.
That's right. And then we have these books that are written to teach kids maths that really don't draw from research or what we know about learning. They're written very quickly by publishing companies um, to get them out there. And they don't teach maths in a creative, visual way. It's just lots and lots of short, uninteresting questions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, teachers, if they really are under that kind of pressure, here's this book to teach from, here's your district pacing guide, here are all the tests. It's hard for them to really implement the ideas. So we need leaders. We need change at the
Hmm.
leadership level as well as.
Tell me a little bit more about standards. Like, how did standards become the way we do education? And you've mentioned kind of big ideas, like go into a little bit more about like maybe an alternate view on that, because we don't want to let go of like there are right answers in math and we do want to have high expectations. It's not about making it easier. And I think standards have become kind of synonymous with like excellence or like a high degree of rigor or something like that. So talk to me about that idea a little bit.
Yeah, when I was working with the Department of Education in California, one of the things I learned in that process was the standards were never intended to be a guide for teaching. They were never written to be the guide of what teachers teach. They were more written as a setting out somewhere what is everything. But they have become this guide for teaching, and textbooks have taken all these small little standards and turned them into small little questions for kids. So, as I mentioned, one of the work we did in California was to really think about what are the big concepts in each grade level. That is what is really important. That is what will underpin everything students do. And so we combine standards into those bigger concepts. It's exactly the same mathematics. If you teach to those big ideas, kids are learning a number of standards at once. We don't have to go one by one by one. I mean, if you teach at the standards, what's happening is you might be teaching fractions for some weeks of the year, and then 6 months later, you're teaching shape. But actually, kids can learn fractions through shapes. Why aren't they combined? Why do we separate everything and make it disconnected? So, yeah, any work that we can do to bring back the connections in maths. Maths is a very connected subject. Anybody who works in mathematics knows that it's actually a subject of a few big ideas and a lot of rich connections between them. So, having kids see and know those connections is important. In our system, the teachers don't even know the mathematical connections
Well, because
because
you're
they've
you're
only learned
like
in this
you're a
disconnected way.
geometry teacher, right? Like
Mhm.
we've even taken math and we've made it
Right.
into subjects. So it's like, hey, I'm only thinking about geometry. I'm only thinking about algebra. So it's
Yeah.
like the way we've set it up makes it impossible for
Yeah.
even well-educated people to see those connections.
And, when I came to this country, I had never seen that because not every country separates high school
Really?
maths into different courses. No, in fact, the US is one of very few countries in the world that do that. Most countries teach maths, and that was what I learned in school. So when I was doing high school, we would do problems that involved algebra and geometry because that is the maths of the world. And when I first got here, I was like, wow, I don't even know where I would put this problem. It has algebra and geometry inside. Is that a geometry? Or does that go
Not
out?
allowed. Not allowed.
So, yeah, any moves we can have to integrate mathematics in the high school levels is also really helpful.
Okay. What you're saying here is reminding me, actually bringing me back to high school, because I grew up in California and I remember my math actually being more integrated like this now that I think about it. I've lived in Arizona and done other education things. So now my brain is like more segmented. But when I was in like 10th grade, I had, it was called like pre-college math or something like that. There was like it wasn't totally interconnected, but it was algebra and geometry and you got everything in that year,
Yeah.
and then you'd build on that and all of those different, but it wasn't super connected or visual like you're talking about, but maybe that's what they were trying to accomplish, like
Yeah.
to undo
And there
that.
was a move in the and to teach more integrated maths, and
Hmm.
it was being really pushed out by people who love the traditional ways and want things to stay the same. But some states have made tremendous progress. In Utah, there is only integrated maths. That was made as a decision at the state level, And everybody teaches integrated maths in Utah. And they also have pathways in data science. They can choose in high school whether they're focusing on data or, more calculus route. And they get really great results. Their results have really gone up since they've moved maths more into the 21st century. Yet still we fight about it. In California, there's huge battles about it. We don't look at the evidence and look at, for example, the data from Utah. We just fight about it.
There's this analogy that I'm a speech language pathologist and I'm very into early literacy instruction. So the whole reading wars back and forth it kind of smacks of the same thing where it's like, is it this way? Is it this way? It's like, it's very similar.
Well, we have the maths wars that are like the reading wars and are so unproductive because that's not helpful if people are at war with each other. Same with reading. Yeah. I mean, of course, we had the whole language approach. So how I learned to read. Then we had phonics, and now everybody's saying it's all about phonics. Of course, kids need both. It doesn't make sense that you just isolate the sounds and learn in that way. It's meaningless for kids. And of course, you need some of that. Both are important, but now we're pivoting. We're going to go all one way.
I just love fighting, I think. But there's an analogy that I learned early on in my literacy education about chocolate cake. Like if I was like, hey, Joe, you want to come over and we'll have a snack together. We'll have a treat. And then I sat you down and I gave you a quarter cup of cocoa and some vinegar and some salt and some flour and made you eat them. You would not want to come back to my house to eat my treat, right? You would hate this. And then you'd be like, oh, I don't think I'm a cake person. But if you mix all of those things together and make it delicious, that's a story in the literacy analogy, right? And it's like, I can help you fall in love with this story. And then eventually you'll want to know how to make it yourself. And I feel like you're doing a similar thing in math with tell me a little bit more about U cubed and visual math, the moves you're trying to make there. Because it seems analogous where it's like, if we can help kids experience math in an awe-inspiring, fun and engaging way, then they'll be more interested and the things that they discover, the concepts will be more relevant.
Exactly. We love to have units for kids where they're really engaging with something. One of the things I'm most proud of on UCubed at the moment, that is one of our most recent things, is we developed a partnership with Stanford women's basketball team. Because we know that sport has a lot of data and mathematics inside it. And we said we'd like to develop a unit on basketball, and they worked with us, which was fantastic. So in this basketball unit, this is all free on our site, kids watch videos of the Stanford players explaining basketball to them and showing them moves. And then they try it themselves on their desks, and they're doing really important maths. And we have a nice little video of students reflecting on the unit. And one of the students says, I think this is really important that people teach maths in this way. And then us kids wouldn't see it as useless as we do now. And when I play this for teachers, they all laugh at this student saying, maths really isn't as useless as we all think it is, because that seems crazy to teachers. How can you think maths is useless? But of course, that's what kids think when they never get use it and apply it.
When in the course of your daily childhood, are you put in a situation where you really need math to solve a real world problem? It's not like that, because we've created kind of a synthetic world for kids, and we need to help them make the tie.
That's so abstract and removed from their lives. One of the first studies I did was my PhD study in England. Followed kids through different schools. And then I was actually able to go and interview them 10 years later after they'd experienced these different school approaches. And the kids who'd gone to the traditional school, they were in ability groups, copy these methods. One of the biggest reflections of the kids afterwards, when they were adults, when they were 24, 25, was, I see maths are in the world everywhere now. Why was it so disconnected when I was in school? Why did we never know that this is, everywhere in the world? Which is a good question. And that was really very strong for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it is all around you, but a normal kid is not going to be like, that's math, right? Because they need someone to engage with them in a way that kind of teaches them to think that, and to teaches them, like, trains,
Well,
like when you're doing art, like, your art teacher is not just training your skill, but your observation skills too, to help
that's
you
right.
see angles and
And
see
we
light
teach this
differently.
very fake maths in schools.
Right. It's very
It's
synthetic.
really only useful for school. And so we do things to stop kids seeing that this is the maths in the world. And that's part of what we need to change.
Yeah, we do this exercise with our Prenda kids where so they're all doing master-based learning, it's age mixed. Everyone's on their own track doing their own goals, but they have to set a purpose every time they set a goal, like a year-long math goal, come with a purpose. And sometimes I'll go through our system and I'll read them. And I am always surprised to see how many of them say something like, I want to complete fourth grade math so that I can be ready for fifth grade math. I'm like,
Mm,
oh, that's not a purpose. It's like that's just like
yeah,
doing number computations for computation's sake. Like that's
right.
not a real broad, deep, meaningful purpose. And so I'm trying to still like push our community to understand what purpose and relevance looks like, and authentic use of math. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, indeed. And we set ourselves up for that by the way we teach kids.
Hmm.
We're not helping them see how important these ideas are for their lives. I mean, of course, a lot of teachers are, and they're doing it fantastically, but we need it to be more widespread.
Yeah. So a new project you have going, I don't know if it's new, but Struggly.com.
Oh, yeah, Struggly.
Yeah. Tell me more about
Struggly is
Struggly.
a little online tool we've developed. So this came about. I've had a lot of people over my career say, come and work with us in this app firm. And I look at their maths apps and they're all about speed and calculating. But this was different. So I was contacted by a really cool design firm in Germany by one of the leaders of the company who had said that her daughter had significant maths anxiety. She was 8 until she started doing the tasks that we share. And now she loves maths and is top of her class in maths. And so she became really passionate about getting this maths out to more kids. So what I love about what they can do in this design company is they can make these mathematical ideas really come to life through their amazing digital work they do. So it's an online tool for kids of really any age. It's particularly good right now, I think, for students of about 4 to 12, but there's more and more being added to it because it's giving kids the message that struggle is good. And we know, we talked about how important it is. But yeah, it's just a tool where they get to see beautiful maths and kids are loving it. Everywhere we're finding is from everywhere that the kids who engage with
Mm.
Struggle love it. And parents are saying to me, we used to have film night at my house, special treat. And now my children are saying, can we do Struggly instead? And there's just, kids they get badges for struggling and for making connections between ideas and for persisting for a long time on problems. So, and they love those. They love the badges. So, yeah, I'm really happy about the way
Those
Struggly is going.
those are actually like the metrics, like the gamification of Struggly isn't how many right answers can you earn. It's literally like how long can you persist. That's
And can you
amazing.
see a connection between ideas? And what I really love is they've managed to bring into Struggly valuing the different ways kids think about something because so many maths apps and textbooks, they're really looking for one way, and if you if you do something slightly different, then you get a big no, big wrong, where it's not wrong, it's just somebody thinks about it differently. So that's great about Struggly. They've managed to really value that.
Yeah, I was playing with it a few days ago. There aren't like instructions. Like you're kind of given an
No,
activity and you kind of have to figure out what you're even supposed to do.
that's
And
right.
my brain was immediately so frustrated by that because my brain just like wants to win, right? Like wants
Uh-huh.
to like do it as fast as it can. And it's like
Yeah,
there's no instruction. Like I have to like experiment with this thing. And like that is my brain. It's engaging my brain in a struggle right there. And that's
right.
changing
And
the
and
architecture of
kids
my
are
brain.
really good at that, better than we are. There
Yeah.
are no instructions, so they dive in and they have to figure out how it works. Makes it
Yeah.
great for language learning because it's not language heavy. And the kids totally get it. Yeah. They're expecting me to figure out how to do this. I'm going to press this, press that, try that. And they're in. So
Amazing.
I think it's harder for us adults.
Yes, it is definitely harder. We don't have the neural plasticity that the kids do, I don't think, right?
Well,
There still
we don't
is
have as much.
neuroplasticity. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
there. Isn't that like when I was in grad school, I was like, I'm pretty sure they taught us that like your brain doesn't change. Like you can't make new
Yeah.
synapses and things like
I
that. That
think
we
that's what
believed
people
that for a
used to
long
say.
time. Yeah.
Mhm. And, when the first evidence came out was actually done with taxi drivers in London. Taxi drivers, I don't know if you've taken a black cab in London, but you are told that you can get into a black cab, name any place, street, landmark, street, anything, and they'll take you there. That is the expectation. And is pretty true. I've never found a black cab driver to not know somewhere. But to become a black cab driver, you have to take this extremely difficult test called the knowledge, where you have to have memorized every street, every landmark in a 25-mile radius of London, which is complicated. And I think the average amount of times it takes to pass the knowledge is 7 times. So the neuroscientists were like, oh, we should look at the impact of this knowledge training on taxi drivers' brains. And what they found was going through this process changed their hippocampus. So when they released this evidence, and I think this was in the 90s, people didn't believe it. And they argued against it because that's what they thought. Your brain is fixed by the time you're an adult. Maybe as children it's not, but by the time you're an adult, your brain is fixed. And they have absolutely shown now that's not the case. And in fact, some of the studies of neuroplasticity have been done in retirement homes where they find that the greatest evidence, the greatest times for people's brains are when they're learning new things. So they've studied all these older adults and find that the most neuroplasticity comes when these adults take on something new that they hadn't learned before.
Interesting.
But yeah, neuroplasticity is happening all through our lives. And
Yeah.
that
So
was not what people believed, is still not what people believe.
I just wonder what else we believe right now that's not going to be true. All of the things
Right?
that, that
Yes.
engender these limiting beliefs. It's like, oh, can we just rip the Band-Aid off and just stop with all of this? All of this.
Mhm.
Let's just let every kid be gifted and everyone learn. Like it really isn't about, I mean, I think education has just become a giant sorting machine essentially. And like if you can't do
Mhm.
it in this way after the teachers explained it once, like you're not special. And I just feel like we're losing, there's the concept of like the lost Einsteins where it's like how much human innovation and creativity and problem solving power are we leaving on the table because we're not able to nurture it in these
How
early
much?
educational years.
And how
Um,
much in maths more than any
mhm.
other subject?
Yeah. And you don't have to turn the
It's
whole world. You can still do
tragic.
meritocracy, you can still compete in the market, you can do all of those things, but like education should be a place where you can come and everyone can have access and success.
Amen.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. We're going to wrap up with our favorite question. Who is someone in your life that has helped shape your perception of yourself, like helped you overcome limiting beliefs, helped like you find your passion or kindled your motivation? Like, who is
Hmm.
that person and
I
what did they
think I
do?
would have to go to somebody who I mentioned at the beginning, which is the maths teacher I had when I was 17, 18. Up to that point, as I said, maths had always just been about speed and right answers and uh, mostly men as well. So here I was doing A-level maths. I had a woman teacher. I always remember, uh, we had a head teacher who was very strict and you weren't allowed to wear earrings, not children or teachers. And she would run into our maths classroom and slam the door behind her, so panting because she'd just passed the head teacher in the corridor and she'd got these big dangly earrings on. And I was like, wow, this is a different kind of maths teacher. And she was very personable. As I said, she had us work in groups and we would discuss ideas and then she would teach us new things inside these projects, very much what we teach now. And she did change the way I thought both about maths and myself. So I think she's been very influential in the career I've had.
I love that. And then last question, how can people learn more about your work? We've mentioned ucubed.org, struggly.com. How else?
My new book, Mathish, is a great way to read about it all. And then, yes, those are the places I would say, Struggly. And for Mathish, I have a website now, mathish.org, because I share some ideas in Mathish, which are just in a black and white book. And I really wanted people to have visual, nice handouts to give to kids and things. So they're on that website. So yeah, those are the main places.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Boaler. I've just loved this conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. I've loved it too. Thanks.
The Kindled podcast is brought to you by Prenda. Prenda makes it easy to start and run an amazing microschool based on all the ideas we talk about here on the Kindled podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at PrendaLearn, and if you'd like more information about starting a microschool, just go to prenda.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep kindling.